Welcome to the April meeting. And once again, we are live and Zoom. And Sandy's trying to keep track of who's all on Zoom so you can all be entered into the drawing. So please turn your cameras on so she can see you. If you haven't combed your hair today, please comb it first. Get dressed. It's time to start your day. Plein air painting. It's a scary thing. It was a scary thing for me, too. It was very scary. It took Karen Bixler 2 years to talk me into plein air painting. Now I try to do it as much as possible. We have a panel tonight going to talk about plein air setup, plein air painting, and try to take some of the fear out of it for you. Our MC tonight for the panel, which I'm on, is Barb Yoder, and I would like to turn things over to Barb Yoder.
So first I'd like Karen Bixler to come up. Karen Bixler is our acrylic artist, plein air artist. I've known Karen for a few years now, and she's a very delightful lady, and we paint together every Wednesday, so we have a lot of fun. So Karen, what I'd like to know first is, when did you start plein air painting?
About 10 years ago, when I finally got loose of work and could go outdoors and play during the day. I always thought I'd like it, but wasn't sure. But oh my, nothing like it.
And how long did it take you to figure out show your setup kind of, and talk to us about that?
The first setup is mine. It took me about 3 or 4 years of MacGyvering this and that and the other. Just don't go out and buy stuff. Just take what you have outdoors and fool with it, because I had to learn what size I like to work outdoors. I had to learn that some people can take 3 tubes of paint and go galloping over mountains and paint just fine. That is not me. I like a whole lot of colors, so that changes what I have to pack. It changes what size palette I want. For those of us who are getting on, I needed to find out how to set up for physical limitations so I didn't die out there. So I would recommend a year or two just piddling around with what you have in the studio, take it outdoors and work with it and see what you like to do. For me, the big deal was the palette size. This still isn't as big as what I use indoors, but it was big enough. And so I picked out a rig that could support that palette size. I don't work very large. I work 8x10 or 9x12 outdoors. That's all I can do in a couple, 3 hours. I don't like to take work back to the scene and work on it. The light's different the next day anyway. And if I take it inside and work on it, I usually kill it. So I like to do something that I can get done in a couple hours. So that's kind of the setup. Acrylics I had worked with indoors for, since the 70s. And so I wanted to stick with it. There are retarding mediums that you can get to slow down the drying outdoors. But by the time I got back into it, there's this wonderful stuff called open acrylics made by Golden Paint Company. It's formulated to stay moist quite a bit longer than regular acrylics. So it gives you a chance outdoors on a hot, windy day when it's dry. Like watercolor, acrylics are very weather sensitive. A cool day, a foggy day, it will behave very differently than a hot, windy day. And you experience that a few times and you learn what to expect. First time I went out on a cold, foggy morning, I slathered my background, and then my paint went everywhere. It took me an hour to get control of it, so you learn. But I still like working with acrylic. This rig, finally about year 4 I bought it. It's from the, let me think, Gorilla Painter, Judson's Art Supply, where I got it. It's a heavy-duty tripod. It's a large field box. But it set up everything I needed. And by the time I got to that, I can set it up in about 5 minutes and I'm ready to work. How lovely. It took me quite a bit longer than that to set up my make-do stuff. So I really appreciated it when I finally got around to getting what I needed.
And how do you haul it?
I'm looking for a Sherpa. That's the one component I don't have yet. It's a good Sherpa. In town, it's getting pretty busy in town, and sometimes you need to walk a ways. So I've got a little canvas wagon, but out if I can get close to the city parks, I just carry it straps. I've got a pochade box that carries strap, the tripod strap. I like to work with the shade umbrella, so that's another strap. I work with one of these canvas carriers, so that's a strap. Okay, again, the picture, a lot of straps.
I wish we had a picture of you strapped up, because it is kind of a sight.
It is pretty funny. Yeah, it is pretty funny.
That's great.
But I've tried assorted carts, and the old shoulders don't like those, so straps are the way I go. That's what I mean by fiddling around with equipment to see what your physique can tolerate. Some of you guys don't have to worry, and I hate you, but the rest of us going to have to work with that. The other thing I wanted to mention was on weather, hats. Wear one, even if you don't wear one anywhere else. Besides protecting your eyes, it lets your pupils dilate and you can see color better. Try that sometime. When you've got the sun in your eyes and then you shade them, you look at something and see how much better you can see. So get a hat, get a big old hat.
And it'll also protect you from ticks that fall out of the trees.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's that. So the nemesis is wind. What? Yeah, no bugs. There's no bugs. Take bug spray. Take sunscreen. I never could figure out, a lot of these things come with what they call stone pouches to weight it down. Now, I'm not supposed to carry heavy stuff, but I'm supposed to carry a big rock. I'm not getting that. But usually there's enough stuff you're carrying. You can shove something there to help weigh down your easel. When you get outdoors, how many of you paint outdoors right now or have? Oh, more than half. Good. I remember, and I still, at the beginning of every season, when I get out and see everything, I'm just knocked over. I don't know what to look at first. The first time I went out, I thought, what am I going to do with all this green? That was the first challenge, was just sorting out what I can get down on this little piece of canvas in a couple hours. But I like that. It teaches you how to see really quickly, see where shadows are very quickly. For me, that's the bones. And to figure out what catches your eye quickly and get it down, because it's going to change in 10 minutes. And by the time 2 hours goes by, you're not even looking at what you saw 2 hours ago. So I think that's fun. Other people, it drives them nuts, but I think it's fun because it's kind of like a quick draw thing. It's a study. Don't worry about making a painting. Half my work is throwaway. The other half's the best I ever did. I never know which it's going to be. I don't. And halfway into it, I don't either.
So when you say that the light changes from the time that you start till the time that you finish, do you just constantly change the light, or do you figure out where you want the light to be and not move your source of light?
I chased it a couple times, and then I learned my lesson. I spot the shadows where I like them and the highlights, and I try to make a note of that right away. I will take photos as a reminder of where those shadows were. But when the light changes and you go, oh, that's so cool, I'm going to put that highlight here. And 20 minutes later, you go, oh, yeah, that's really neat. And you end up with a pile of mid-value mud. It doesn't work. So, pick out something quick and stay with it on that. It teaches you to look at things quickly, size it up quickly, and see what you can see. That's what I like. You learn how to see quickly.
Do you do a value sketch first?
I should, and I have. And if I take the time to do that, they're always better. But in lieu of that, I'll do the shadows first, which in a way is kind of a no-tan. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
What else? Oh, cameras. I do take pictures, but you know what? When I get home and look at those pictures, it's not half of what I saw. Not half. But it is a helpful reminder. Any other questions on acrylics or gear? It suits me. It suits what I need physically, but there's a million different setups out there. But I drug my studio stuff outdoors for several years, and just fiddled with that. Oh, there's that. Yeah, you'll have company in most places, especially at the town parks. But most people are so intrigued by what you're doing, they won't get in the way too much. I think it's kind of fun. And my stuff always starts out a horrible mess. And usually you can, when they come up behind you and see what you're doing, there's this dead silence because they want to be polite, but they don't know what to say. My standard line is, come back in a couple hours, it might be a painting. But yeah, you'll have company, but most people are just kind of curious and intrigued that you'd even try it. Yeah, little kids are fun.
Are there any other questions? So Terry Buchholz, you are next. Let's welcome Terry. A round of applause.
Thank you. I wonder if should I drag that over by my kit? I can take it with me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
And
Take my
yeah.
mask off. Okay.
How long have you been plein air painting?
I started plein air in 2010 at Fred Doloroso's plein air workshop that ArtLink sponsored. And that's when I met so many Artist Guild people and ended up joining the guild. But Fred was full of information, and I use a lot of the tenets I learned from Fred today. In fact, can you hear me? Okay.
It's much better.
In fact, I used a lot of his notes just to prepare what I wanted to say today because he is a wealth of information. But I'm going to crawl over here to my stuff. When I first started plein air painting, I had the French easel. I don't know if you can see that from here, but it's this dinosaur right here. And a lot of people still use it, and I think a lot of people, are adapted to it and love it, but it's unyielding. It's heavy. It's actually very convenient. You can carry most of your equipment right there, but it takes you about 2 hours to unfold it, and then in my case, you have to duct tape the legs together, because like I was saying, they're like Bambi on ice, and they just start stretching out as time goes by. And but now I use the Coulter system. That's this thing. It's all loaded down, and it's not usually, but this was designed by the plein air artist James Coulter, and it's sold through Art Box and Panel Company, and it just folds up to a nice little compact system. And on his website, he even recommends which backpack to fit, and it all fits in here. It's the Kelty backpack. I don't know why you don't have one, John, but it all fits along with everything else I drag along with me. So I'm going to just say a few things about oil, since that's my category. Oil is the pros of oil is that it's very forgiving, it's very flexible, it's buttery, and its dry time is very, very extended. So if you make mistakes, you have time to repair them. Usually on the field, you may have like bugs and leaves stuck to the painting, but you can take care of all that stuff when you get done at the end of the day. In fact, you can even drop it into a reflecting pond if the wind catches it. And if you're with a gentleman like John Kelty, you're going to have to go in after it yourself. But I used paper towels and dabbed it off, and it actually improved on it. It gave it a little bit more of a painterly feel. But so I don't think you can do that with watercolor or acrylic. Probably not pastels. But I think those are the pros. The cons are they're expensive if you use good quality oils, and I think you should. If you're going to put that much work and time into it, I think you want to use quality supplies. And the initial setup is expensive, but this Coulter system I've had for years, and it's in great shape.
But Terry, the benefit of oil is you can start over. You can scrape off what you've just done.
Absolutely. Yes, Sandy was just saying it's pliable, and if you make a mistake, you can paint over it. You can scrape it off. You can wipe it off. A lot of people just go, this isn't working, and they wipe the whole thing off and start over, and I can relate to that. The cons, besides being expensive, is it's messy, and so you're going to get it on you. You're going to go home with ultramarine blue smeared across your back, and the saturated phthalos are going to be like under your nails. You're going to need a panel holder. This is one type of panel holder that it can carry stretched canvases as well as panels. It's adaptable, and you can carry 2 different sizes at once, and looks like up to, well, I don't know, maybe 8 panels, 2 or 3 stretchers. This is the one most of us use, and this is the Raymar panel holder. It's great. It can hold, I think, 8, or is it 6? Okay, back to back. And can you still hear me? And it's adaptable. Each size, there's several sizes of these, and each size will hold like 2 choices. Like, for instance, 16 by 20, or you turn it sideways and it's 12 by 16. Or you can use these adapters to make smaller sizes. And you can look at that after we're finished here. Or you can use a pizza box. A lot of people just use pizza boxes if it's just a flat panel. Okay, let's see. Brushes. When I first started out, I thought I had to bring every brush I owned, and now I just try to bring a selection of mostly flats, brights, and filberts, and I use the workhorses when I'm doing plein air, like the bristles, because they really hold up. And then the details, you can just, what's that? Details, just smaller brushes, but you're not going to get to that usually while you're still out, unless you paint fast, and I don't. So,
So do you take your work home and work on it some, or do you finish your pieces on site?
definitely work on mine at home, because I'm a slow painter. And usually, by the time I've wiped them off and done those things, like Karen was saying, not to chase the light, I usually chase the light, and then you have to make the adaptations at home. So the best advice is to make your thumbnail sketch. And I always take a sketchbook with me, and I've got it divided off into the panel equivalent sizes. So all I have to do is decide what size panel I'm going to use, and then use the corresponding square. Let me get past the banjo head designs. Well, anyway, a sketchbook and being able to get down your basic shapes. No tan is a huge important thing. If you can just get like your basic shapes and determine the no tan, that's the best foundation to start from. Do you guys know what no tan is? We had an entire program one time devoted to it. I brought my iPad just to show you an example.
Oh, good idea.
This is a photo that I'm working on right now, a painting at home. I don't know, can you see this? You can use like your photo programs to reduce it to 2 strongest values, the lights and the darks. And this is an example of the no tan of that picture. And so you want to look at that and determine if it's a strong composition and if the 2 main shapes are in harmony. That's actually, I think, what no tan means. I wrote that down. Dark light harmony. It's a Japanese term. And if it creates tension, if it creates balance, if you've got those things figured out, you've got a good composition nailed usually. Well, like Karen said, work fast, don't chase the light, keep referring back to your thumbnail, so as that light changes, you're not tempted to just follow it, so you have like a time frame of the 8 hours that you're out. What else?
Do you stand up or sit down when you're painting outdoors?
I stand because I have found that it is important to keep moving back from it. You want to, at home, I'm sitting in one spot and I tend to get my nose right up there, and I'm using like the eyeliner brushes to paint with. And when you're out in the field, it's better to stand back and use those big brushes, make your big gestures, and try to keep it spontaneous and dramatic. But,
What's your favorite thing to paint outdoors?
oh gosh, I can't say I have a favorite. I really like sky and clouds. Greens, like Karen was saying, actually, greens can become overwhelming though. And a lot of times you want to reach for your sap green or your viridian, but if you look at it, it's not so really green. You know, there's a ton of grays involved. And you see that outside, where with a photograph it tends to melt those colors together and overemphasize the chroma instead of the subtleties. Work with oil. Specific to oil, you work dark to light. I don't know if you do that with
I
acrylic.
can do either way.
Okay. Because,
I tend to work dark to light, but I could go just the opposite. No matter.
okay, watercolor, you can't do that. But because oil is forgiving, you go dark to light, you try to get those dark shapes in, the big shapes in, and work down. Use your big brushes. Use a big brush for as long as you can. And once you start to have to give into more detail, then you start working with the smaller brushes, and save the bling for last when you start to get to the very end. That's when you're going to put the sparkle in water or the light shining off of an apple. Not in the beginning, or you're going to go over it a million times and lose it. But wear neutral colors. They suggest, if you don't tone your canvases first and you're using a white canvas, if you're wearing a bright, like a red sweater or bright blue, it's going to bounce off of your white surface and skewer the way that you see color. An umbrella is important. In fact, try to keep the sun off of your painting surface and your palette, because that is also, for one thing, it's going to wear your eyes out and it's going to skewer what you're seeing in color. So if you can back into shade or use I didn't bring my umbrellas, but a Shade Buddy and what's the other
Bestbrella
one?
is a good one.
Bestbrella. There's the kind that poke into the ground. There's the kind that attach to your easel, but they're going to save your skin. They'll save your eyes and probably produce a much better painting. Keep your palette clean. It's really easy to let everything start to mush up and everything goes gray. So keep your surface clean, keep your mediums clean. And I just wanted to show you, I use a disposable palette in mine. And then when it's really, really gunky, if I can't wipe it off anymore, I can just pull one of these off and toss it. Oh, the other thing, to save time, I love this thing. I've started using this instead of like bringing my paints out and setting them up in the daytime when you're trying to get on top of the shadows and light. I just go ahead and pour my favorite colors into this little box. And then cover it up, and it fits inside my palette, and I can close it up. And that way too, at the end of the day, they're not all running together with the oil and the medium that's starting to loosen them up. But it's a huge time saver. Another thing, we talked briefly about these viewfinders. I made these out of cardboard and they work just fine, but there are commercial ones, and these are broken into the dimensions. Like I've got it written 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20. This is going to save a lot of time in trying to break down what you want to see, what you're trying to reduce that huge open field into, so you're not like painting a panorama. You can get your actual composition kind of determined with this. This one is broken into the 6 by 8, 9 by 12, 12 by 16. Yeah.
Like, do you set it up like that? And you put it out on your actual,
Yes, if I'm,
and you look through that?
yes. Like for instance, if I have a 12 by 16 panel, I've got little increments broken off here. So it shows the panel broken into, what would that be, 16ths, fourths, both ways. And so you can line it up with what you want to paint, get your composition set, and keep returning to it. Also using this for your thumbnail sketch, but it kind of keeps you back, true to what you were planning in the beginning. And this little device, I know Karen said don't go out and buy stuff, but I bought everything that I think is going to make it easier and better. This device also does that. These are broken into dimensions. It also has the lines, the division lines. So when you do your drawing is an important part of plein air painting. You want to get that drawing true from the beginning. And then this has the red filter that breaks down the values. You can look at that when you come up, but it's a great little product. Also has a grayscale. So when you're thinking of no tan, I'll set that up here.
It's a
Who makes
compact
it?
tool. It's a good one to have.
It's called Picture Perfect. I got it on Amazon, I think.
I wonder where you got that box with all the oil.
This one? I think I got this one on Amazon, but I have a smaller one, and I carry two of those sometimes at United Arts Supply. And you'll want to use rubber bands. Let's see, what else? Here is this little device, breaks down color. If you need to isolate color, you think you're looking at blue, and you look through here, and you'll see that it's more of a gray, for instance. It's kind of a tricky thing to get used to, but it's a handy little device. So I'm a sucker for anything that comes along. So, okay, let's see. Anything else that you can think of?
I think you've done a really good job. Any questions? Other questions?
Yeah.
Can you use your setup for other than oil, like pastel and watercolor as well, or not?
You could actually, because this will lay back, and for watercolor, no, wait a minute, would that work? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I won't mess with it, but you can lay it back flatter. This adjusts up and down. It has a little compass in it even, so you can tell that you've got your setup straight. But yeah, I don't know about pastel. I guess if you're not using tons and tons of pastels, you certainly could.
I think there are some easels that do have different inserts you can get for them
Right.
that'll accommodate pastels and different paint setups.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of you that work in different things, yeah, it might be something to think about.
This one actually comes in 3 sizes too. There's a smaller panel set, and it comes off real easy, that you can travel with easily. And then there's a larger one, and I think that there's a corresponding backpack for the various sizes, but it just lifts off super fast, really easy to break down, get out of the rain. Oh, and speaking of stuff, I just found these, and this is great. If you've got wet brushes and you don't want to take the time to wash them all, you want to just take them home, this little thing, it's like a little test tube, and you put your, what's that? It looks like that. That's exactly what it looks like, but you put your brush through, like, let's see, let me think how you do that, like this.
Yeah.
So the wet part then is isolated from all your stuff. So
That's awesome.
isn't that great?
Yeah, and another hint is that you can just smear a bunch of Vaseline in your brushes, and that'll keep them juicy until you can clean them.
That's right.
Thank you,
That's probably my
Terry.
10 minutes. All right.
Awesome. Okay, Avon Waters, come on down. Avon's going to talk to us about pastels, I believe. Come and get the microphone first. Yay.
You guys are probably getting tired of seeing my face up here.
Nope.
So I'll be quick. You want to ask when I started?
Yes. When did you start, Avon?
I tried to figure that out. And my wife and I found a painting in our house that was hanging from 1995 from a workshop I did up in the dunes. So I had to started somewhere around 94 or 95 in order to do that workshop. But I am not a plein air painter, okay? I am a studio painter. And I recommend anybody that works in the studio to at least try this 3 times, okay? The first time to go, oh, why did they talk me into this? I forgot this, I forgot that, I forgot everything. Or, oh, the wind, the bugs. And then the second time, you've whipped some of those things. No bugs. Yeah, there's no bugs. Especially when it's -2 in the wintertime. Then the third time, you'll start to get the hang of it. And I also agree with Karen that start with what you have. If you don't go out and use watercolor or washes, take a sketchbook and just get used to sitting with the things on your lap or beside you, and then you'll quickly, when you get ready to take whatever your medium is, and take it out there, then you'll be able to already have some experience just putting stuff on your lap and sitting it beside you and whatever. So there's nothing wrong with just parking in a parking place, opening up the trunk and pulling the stuff out. Matter of fact, this group of guys that I paint with, they're once a week on average. That's what they do. They pull up to a place, open their trunk. Sometimes they're driving their little cars off the road, and the grass is in the grill and everything when they're done, but they open the trunk and pull stuff out. One of them's got a folding table like this, one of those little 4-foot by 18-inch. He props it up, puts down, and starts using magic markers to draw with. He's not painting. He's using magic markers. So whatever your medium is, I suggest you do it 3 times. I brought, and just like Karen, first couple years I just used what I had. And then it's like you get out and you see what other people get. You look at the magazines if you're interested, and you start saying, what works best for me? And I had my very first easel was what they call a French half box. Just imagine taking a saw and cutting that in half and then gluing back the leg.
That's right.
And it's the half box. And I had that for a while, but just like they said, the legs started coming apart. And so it came so far apart that then and that was probably the best view of me all night. I took the panel off, and I took scrap wood. By that time, I knew some things I wanted. I took scrap wood, and I took some screws, and I took the panel off, and this little arm thing, and I made my own box. And I used that for a while.
Clever, very clever. I love it.
But it weighs, I don't know, maybe 10 pounds. So that's not good. So then I went to Michael's, and in the craft shop, they have these little lightweight boxes. They're almost like wooden cigar boxes. And I took one of those, and I put a little latch on it, reinforced the place where it flips up. And I took the little trays that they sell with little wooden edges, and I put some old hardware in it so I could put the trays in the box, close the lid, and then open the trays and put them on each side. And then hooks would hang my medium and everything on it. So I used that for a while. And then I gave that one away. My sister used it for her first easel. Then I saw this thing. This thing is called a Versa, and it's made by Easel. It's like a piece of furniture. And by that time, now we're talking, 2010, 2008. And by that time, I was ready to spend some real money on something, and I had a good idea what I wanted, and I bought that. I was doing oils still. And I've used it, switched it over to pastel, and I made little foam dividers, so when you come up, you can take a look and look inside there. Now, notice something. See that solid back? See this solid back? If you're doing any paperwork or you're doing any stretched canvas and you have one of these things that has no solid back, then you're going to want to put cardboard or paper or something behind what you're painting. And that's why those solid backs are there, is because the light will come through there and it will bug you to death. So, if you don't have a solid back, remember, panels work best for things like this. I still was doing some oils while I started pastel, and I got this little thing called from Prolific Painter. Super feather weight, and it has this little bar, and you can get different sizes. I can put up to 20 by 24 on the second size I've got, but this one will hold 11 by 14 or anything that's got a dimension of 14 or 15 inches. And so there's all sorts of stuff out there. This I cannot use with pastels.
Because it's not deep enough? Or?
It's not deep enough to hold any pastels.
That's what I wondered.
Now, the only thing I could do with this, but then I'd be carrying my pastels around, is to use it as a place to put my pastels that I'm using on my painting. But there's all sorts of stuff out there. And Terry was talking about the toned canvas. This one's toned red. I have some yellow, some blue, depending on, I can reach in and grab whatever. When I look at a scene, I say, well, I want this one to be on the warm side, or I want this to be on the cool side. So I'll grab either a blue or a red or a yellow or something like that. Everything. The transportation, this little thing just fits in a backpack, and you've got room for even a tent. This is from the prolificpainter.com, Joshua Beam. He makes a bigger version of this. This one's called Fly on the Wall. And on the back here, there's a little screw hole. It even comes with a little stand that tilts it a little bit, and you can sit in a cafe, prop it out in front of you, and sit there and paint the interior of a building with it. So that's kind of cool. I know, I'm supposed to talk pastel. All right. Prolific Painter is called the Fly on the Wall. There's one he calls the Daytripper, which is slightly bigger.
I have the Daytripper. I was going to bring it, but I didn't.
Now, the only trouble with this particular easel, the last one I got, is it weighs a ton and it costs a fortune because it's built like a piece of solid furniture. It's got tons of dovetails and everything in it. It is a workhorse, and it's been through many, many, many miles and knocked around and bumped over in a carrier across rough ground and everything else. So I did notice that because it's gotten wet a number of times, I'm starting to see some delamination. But other than that, the picture doesn't care. It still goes on there. Any questions? Okay.
Good job. Thanks, Avon. John Kelty, come on down.
Yeah, I really could care less if you're sick of me. Karen, you got your stuff in my way.
It's okay. It's coming.
Watercolor. When you do watercolor outside, you cannot paint the way you do inside. It's different. You don't have the time to glaze and build color, and when it's humid, that stuff will never dry out there. I wouldn't suggest trying to use masking fluid in 90-degree humidity. It just gets real gummy. Doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So you had to paint a little different, and you have to approach it a little different, because you can't wipe it off. I mean, if you screw it up, if you screw this up, this is your option. You start over. Now, what I had to learn, and I started in 2014, I think it would have been. It was probably pretty close. And it took Karen like 2 years to convince me, and it's like, well, I don't have the stuff, and I don't. The honest truth was, I was scared, and I didn't want anybody watching me paint. Boy, did I get over that in a hurry. I really enjoy it, and I have never went back to. I used to go back to painting the old way in the studio. Paint one way outside, paint the old way in the studio with the glazes and the slowing way down. And like every spring, I would have to learn to plein air paint again. And every fall, I would have to learn to paint in the studio again. And finally, I just decided I'm just going to paint the same way year round. Now, everything evolves. The way you paint evolves over time. And it doesn't matter how you're trying to do it. You're going to paint the way you paint. But I really have geared everything towards a simpler setup. I use the same palette indoors as outdoors. I use the same brushes indoors as outdoors. I use the same equipment. I have gone to these panels, which is watercolor adhered to a board or to gator board, which is why this looks much like theirs. And a lot of watercolor easels have a table here. The one thing that a watercolor easel needs to do is it needs to be able to shift the angle, because when it's like this, it will granulate. And for those of you who are watercolorists, you know what that means. It means the pigment is sinking into the texture of the paper, and it's really cool. And you can't get it when it's running off like this. But after a while, you get used to painting like this at an angle, and then you can't paint flat anymore. And I'm seeing on Watercolor Live, almost everybody had their paper propped up at least a 30-degree angle. Almost everybody is painting that way now. And you use the bead of water that forms. That means your wash is still alive. And how I approach the actual painting is I'll paint the lights, which is a very, very light wash. Probably 10% paint, 90% water. And if you want to know what that does to the paper, 10% paint means 90% of this white is going to show through. That's a good way of thinking about watercolor, because that's your light. And then the second is the midtones, and that's about 50-50. And then I go in with the darks, and that's about 70-30, 80-20. And then there, right at the very end, I am literally squeezing paint out of the tube and putting it on the painting. Tube, to brush, to painting. Now, how I approach a painting, now, a lot of you are going to say when you get out there, the first time, it's like, look at it, because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of noise going on, especially if you ever go painting with Karen Bixler, because there will be a lawnmower or a chainsaw or sometimes a jackhammer somewhere close. Always. But I'm talking more about the visual noise. There is so much out there, and you cannot paint it all. You're going to have to make decisions, and your decisions come with your value sketch. Now, I used to do them all the time with pencil, and I carry these with me wherever I go. But I've started to do something a little different for speed's sake, and I am using Copic markers, 4 of them, a number 1, a number 4, a number 7, and a number 10 of neutral gray, and I will do value sketch with those. And it doesn't have to be a work of art. This is a roadmap. Because otherwise, the light changes and you forget. And this is also your first edit. Now, I have been known to move buildings half a block from where they actually are. I move every time I do the downtown skyline, I move the courthouse away from the bank building. I don't know if the mayor minds or not. I've never really asked. But it makes it look better. I will move trees. I will put people where there are no people. I will move people's cars. I will change the car. You don't have to paint a photograph. It doesn't have to be you want to paint the feeling of the scene, not the scene. And from this, you can, within an hour and a half, with a little bit of practice, come up with this.
Awesome.
And that I painted last Friday in New Harmony. No, it didn't win anything.
I love it.
I'm still not over it. This one I painted Thursday in New Harmony. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I was standing right by the river. It was 43 degrees and the wind was blowing. And it blew my easel over twice. I was wearing a winter coat, gloves, and a hat, and freezing to death. Literally shivering, painting. So, probably should have just waited till it got warmer, but oh well. Yeah, you only live once, so you might as well shorten it while you can. So, I really encourage you to watch how the other painters handle a scene. The first year I went to a big paint out, I stood behind a lady whose work I admire, and I watched the way she edited the scene. She was moving trees around. And it looked better when she was done. You don't have to paint every little single detail. You don't have to paint every twig on every tree. You don't have to paint the eyelashes on the people. I usually put people in just about all of my paintings, and they are just glorified stick people. That's all they are. But they look good in there. So, I've learned how to do it. I have really gone Spartan on my equipment. I generally just use these 4 brushes right here. Those are the brushes I use at home, in the studio. Now, why are there 3 other ones? Because I found them in my car after I loaded this up. On New Year's Eve, I made a resolution to start taking care of my brushes. That was in like 2009. Apparently, it still hasn't stuck. I do use this for bigger washes because sometimes you need a lot of paint. But generally, I use a very small palette, very limited, warm to cool. Cad yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown, cad red light, alizarin crimson, diox purple, a little bit of sap green. I've recently added cobalt turquoise because I can't mix it, and cerulean blue and cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, and indigo. And that's it. And that's what I use at home too. And I rarely add anything, but I have added a new color. It's called a Heliocerulean by Schmincke. And it is, the only way I can describe it, it's like a phthalo cerulean. It's really a strong, powerful color, but it is gorgeous. And as soon as I learn how to use it, it's going to be wonderful.
All right.
So April Weller asks, has a painting ever fallen over and gotten messed up? Or does it, when an easel falls, do the paintings get messed? I guess that's the question. Repeat the question because
Well, yeah, when they do fall, do they get messed up? Yeah. Sometimes you can save them, but sometimes they're just gone. But I've generally seen, like, the real impasto oil painters and acrylic painters, when theirs fall, they get really messed up because they pick up, debris. And I can usually fix just about anything. Like I tell when I teach classes, don't give up on anything. I can probably save it for you. So it doesn't. Sometimes it's a blessing when they fall over because it just gives you a reason to just call it. I have a tendency of chasing them to the very bitter end when I should let them go. One thing you need to know about plein air painting is they don't all turn out. They just don't. I honestly didn't know this painting was in there. I don't care for this painting. I was never going to show it, but now I've shown it, so there it is. I personally don't care for it. It got muddy because it was cold. There's, if you do watercolor outside, when it gets cold, it doesn't dry. And people ask me, why don't you paint in the winter? I said, because, the water, it won't dry. It's like, well, does your water freeze? And it's like, I don't know, because my skinny little butt freezes, so I don't go outside in the wintertime. There's a reason I bought a house.
That's right.
So, all in all, it's a very enjoyable experience. And even if you just go outside and paint from a reference photo, I would suggest going outside and painting and enjoying the weather outside. Because come out with us and paint, because art in itself is a very solitary endeavor, and it's nice to have some folks out there to just chat with. Adam, if you come out, you're going to need really long extension cords for your power tools. Please stay downwind from me so I don't have to breathe all the stone dust. But you're welcome to come out. So all in all, I invite you to come out, and there's a lot of things I've learned about plein air painting, especially going to all the paint outs, and the main thing is always remember it's supposed to be fun.
That's right.
If it's not fun, you're not doing it right. Chances are you might be being a little too competitive. And that would probably spoil your fun. I've heard.
Good job.
I don't know.
Good job. Okay, Karen Harvey, come on down. Thank you, John. Well done.
Like you said, it's just supposed to be fun. My part of the fun, probably, I used to do oil painting. And since I've gotten on, as Karen likes to say, she got on, I picked up sketching. Doesn't take up much time, doesn't take much equipment, it's lightweight. I carry it with me all the time. It's my purse, so I got a little lipstick in there, a mask, those things. But in here also, I have some of my equipment. Everything I need right here. Pens, pencils. watercolor.
What about
Everything.
brushes? Do you have brushes in there?
Yes, I do. They're water brushes. They're brushes with water in them, so I can dip into the watercolor anytime I want to. And let me see. Oh yeah, this little gadget just goes on your arm.
And what is that little
You
gadget?
can wipe your brush off on it, and it's all clean. Yes.
And what is that? How did you make that?
Oh, get out of here. It's a pair of socks. I cut off the top with a pair of socks. Anyway, that's really great. Well, but if I don't have that and I'm really in a hurry, this is my go-to sketch pad. I'm anxious to get done with this because I bought a bigger one and it holds a little bigger. And of course I have a pen in it, so I don't need anything else. In the car, outside, anytime, maybe 4 minutes, because sometimes my husband goes into the grocery store and he says, "You don't want to walk around the grocery store, do you?" And I say, "No." So I sit there and sketch. What do I do with my sketches? Well, preparing for this tonight, I went back, I had a big bin, and every time I get through with a sketchbook, little, bigger, sometimes I even make my own sketchbooks. Cut out some big paper, put them in a little thing, sew them in the middle, and that's my sketchbook. Where was I?
Your big bin.
So I was going through this big bin, and I haven't gone through it probably in 3 years. And I was amazed at the stuff that was in there. The things that came back to my mind as I looked at all these little sketches that I had done, the people I met, the places where I went. I have a few things if anybody wants to come up and poke around. There's some good people out there that write about sketching. There's a group called the Urban Sketchers. It's an international group of sketchers that sketch all over the world. They have a great website, blog sites. Check them out. In fact, now that, when 2020, when we're all stuck at home, was a great time to watch YouTube channels. I learned a lot this past year just watching other people sketch. Sometimes when I go out and I want to sit in a chair, I'll take one of these out. I made it. It's just a corrugated stuff. And I can sit there and I can put my paint on there. I can put my sketchbook on there, clip it on, and it gives me a little something to lean against. Yes, sketchbooks, different sizes. A few years ago, I decided to go around and check out the historical places in Allen County. And for 2 or 3 years, and I just picked it up again since we can go outside. And I've been going around to these places and just making sketches of them. And they're just all historical places. Some of them are territories in Allen County. And so if I find somebody's house that's within that historical territory, I go and I sketch their house, like Sandy's. Like a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Yes.
Before the tulips.
Yeah. And sometimes when I go on a trip, I'll just take a little notebook, put the name. We went to California one time. Put the name on it, and those are the sketches that I did when we were in California. What else do we have? Oh, yes. For a few months, I decided to sketch every day. So I made this book, and each page has a week in it. So I could sketch something tiny, tiny, that represented what I did that day. And those are fun, and they make you do something every day. What else do we got in here? Oh yes, this is my bigger paint box. I have a chair with a table along the side of it. So it's nice when it's a very lightweight chair. And if I don't have to carry it too far, I go sit down and then I can get a bigger sketchbook or a little bit bigger paint. Yes. Besides my normal one, I have all sorts of other ideas. And I found these pencils a couple years ago. They're called Blackwing. They're longer than usual. And they're a nice soft pencil. And then they have this weird eraser on the top, which is great to get in small places and erase. Anyway. And then everybody has to have one of these.
That's right.
If you're out there and you got this big house that's like this, but you want to draw it like this, works great. And it's adjustable so that whatever you're trying to measure, then it goes down to a small sketch possibility. Great tool.
I love it.
Pencils. I love soft pencils. And I found some just recently that were water. What they do is they go on your paper, and when you put water over them or watercolor, they dissolve, which is very handy.
I love it. That's
How's
really
that,
great.
Mrs. Yoder?
That's fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody. It was wonderful. Are there any other questions?
So on the computer, there are 2 comments. I love this technique for my travel journal and travel from Jane. And Diana says, all this is really great info.
And you had a question back there? What's the name of that tool that goes like that?
What's the name of this tool?
I use them in my studio all the time when I'm working.
They're usually in the drafting department, aren't they?
It has a name of Prospect, Prospek.
They're plastic. Jerry's Artarama sells them, a bunch of places sell them.
Yeah, they're real cheap.
They're a couple of bucks. But they're very, very useful.
Yeah, proportional divider. Google it. You'll find anything.
I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, you're
Oh.
doing great.
I have hearing aids. I can't hear most of the time, and I can't understand anybody that talks under a mask.
Super duper. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's take a 7-minute break, and then we'll come back and have a little bit of a business.
Production facilities provided by Access Fort Wayne. Learn more under the Explore tab at acpl.info.
The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library.